I think for a few months there, I was just angry. And I was wrestling a lot with, if God's good, then is he not powerful enough? And if he's powerful enough, is he not good? And I think a lot of times when circumstances implode in our face, we immediately begin to question everything we ever believed. And that's 100% what happened for me.
Hey, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine Podcast. Excited to welcome back an alumni. It's been like 3 or 4 years to have you back. But Jordan Lee Dooley back on the podcast. Crowd goes wild. Jordan, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So last time we met, you were speaking at a big wig conference here in town, and you were gracious enough to come hang out and discuss what you were talking about that day. But big stuff happening right now. Just this month, your second book was released, best-selling book.
Yeah,
so congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a wild few weeks. I mean, it's like book launch is a long season. So the 6 months prior and then the month since it came out has been wild, but fun, like so much fun.
So how's it gone?
Good, really well. It's interesting. I feel like my first book, was really about going really wide. It was about just like reaching as many people as possible. In this book, I kind of wanted to take people a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And I really think that's kind of what's happened. It's been really encouraging to see the response. And just, I think even the message has been really needed because I think we hear a lot of cliche advice when things don't work out in your life. And this book is all about that, but from a very what if you get up and try again and it doesn't work out again? And so I really wanted to speak to that because I think a lot of times when things go wrong, we're just told get up and give it another shot. Yeah. And it's what if you keep doing that? And so it's been interesting to just see how much it has truly resonated with so many people. Yeah.
Well, Jordan, the book's called Embrace Your Almost. And when I've seen, obviously, follow you on social and we have many common friends and all the work up to the book, I knew I was working on my book that comes out in October called The Death of a Dream. And as I kept seeing more and more stuff that you were putting out, I'm like, man, I would love to have Jordan in and just get your take because I think it's, as we're doing this series, the Death of a Dream series was on the podcast, I think there are almost three, there's probably more, but in my brain there's almost three kinds of deaths of dreams. I think there's the kind that's there was the never would have been dream. For me, as a kid, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Well, you have to have perfect vision and my eyes were super jacked up, super nearsighted. So right away it's cool, that'd be neat, but there's no way you're going to be a fighter pilot because you don't
have that qualification.
So it wasn't a death of a dream. It was just this was a never dream.
Yeah.
Then there's dreams that, and a part of my story in my book is you actually achieved it in some form. You were living the dream and then something happened and it died. And there's great pain there.
Yeah.
But what you're hitting on, and I think is huge, is I think one of the most painful times is when it's right there. You're almost able to grasp it, but it becomes, as in your words, an almost.
Yeah.
It was I could see it, I could smell it, I could taste it.
Yep.
Talk to us about that, understanding.
Yeah, well, I think I love how you broke that down because, broken dreams and unmet expectations can come in so many different ways. But this sense of I was, in the beginning of the book and in the intro, I tell this story to kind of give a visual representation of what it feels like. So when I was in high school, I joined the track team. Not because I was good at running. I just needed something to do and joined the track team. But I had done track when I was in middle school. So I had this bad memory of I never want to run the 400 meter dash because it was just hard, I think. And so I started, going to practice.
It's a whole lap.
It's a whole sprint around the track. It's a terrible race. I don't know why it was invented. So anyways, I remember when I first started going to practices, I was I will do this, but if the coach makes me run the 400 meter dash, I'm not going to do it. 3 practices in, maybe 4 practices in, he's comes up to me, the coach, and he's so you have a 400 stride, so you're gonna be running the 400 meter dash on Saturday. And I was all right. But then I'm naturally a competitive person too. So I'm okay, now I have to do it. Of course I didn't keep my own word. So anyways, the track meet rolls around, first track meet. And it was actually it was almost like a preseason type track meet where there were multiple schools competing.
Okay.
And there was a big school for that in our area that was always best in all the sports, right? So it was always a big deal if you could beat them at something, at anything, track or basketball or anything. So anyways, I take my place at the starting line. The guy shoots off the gun. We take off around the track, and I'm coming around the last curve, or like the last turn, and entering into the last 100 meters. And I realize that I'm neck and neck for first place with somebody from that big school. Okay. And I'm like, how is this happening, right? And I'm coming down. Yeah. And I got really excited, and I'm coming down the final 100 meters of the race, neck and neck for first place. And for whatever reason, this image of Olympic runners popped into my brain. And if you watch Olympic runners on TV, you see them like lean over the finish line to cross just milliseconds before their opponent. So I think that's a good idea, even though I have like zero experience with that tactic. And so I start leaning, but I didn't time it. So I leaned way too early and just face planted on the track. My arms are like stretched out in front of me. The finish line is like 2 inches from the tips of my fingers. Like, it was truly a tragic moment. Everyone blows past me. I'm laying on the track, and I can like look up and see everybody like high-fiving over the finish line. And I'm like, this is not happening. So anyways, the official comes over to me. He's like, do you want to finish? And so I get up and like walk over the finish line and have like skinned elbows and the whole 9 yards. And it was just an interesting, looking back, it's like, why am I sharing that story? It's because I think for me, one, it was like, I almost finished first and then I finished dead last. Like I almost like achieved the little dream of that moment of beating somebody from the school. But then it was like, oh my gosh, it just went really bad, really fast. Just when I was like, I could see the finish line, right? And I look back at that moment and it's like, how accurate is that for how we feel when we're like, the finish line was right there. Yeah. Like, what just happened? And sometimes those moments are due to outside circumstances. Something comes and trips you up. You get thrown off course by illness or a loss of a loved one, or something that happens in your company, that COVID. Like, there's outside circumstances, but sometimes there's also times where just when we're about to reach the next level or cross over to the next milestone in life, maybe there's also times where sometimes we have to decide. Like, we come to this realization of like, wait. I don't know if this is actually right for me, or like this is actually becoming really unhealthy. And I can see the finish line in clear view and I could keep going and hustling my way there, but I'm just so sometimes it's also like due to a decision you have to make for the health of your family, your own health, something else, or just where God leads you differently. Yeah. So anyways, sometimes I share that story just because that's kind of how it feels. It feels like face planting just inches before the finish line at times, even if you had to choose it, even if you didn't want to choose it. Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing to discuss, because I think a lot of times we think that the death of a dream is always happening to us, but sometimes it's happening for us, and it doesn't seem like that in the moment. But I look back at that and I'm like, man, that really started to make me rethink, like, why am I running track? And then I think about all the different almosts in my life up until that point, such as my husband was on an NFL team. Like, we thought that was going to be our story. And then 2 weeks before our wedding, he got cut. And then he was supposed to play, he was supposed to do a camp, and literally the week of the camp, or a couple weeks before the camp, he had an emergency appendicitis, like just doors getting closed. Right. So anyway, I just share that visual and kind of stories like that, because I think we're all familiar with feeling like the finish line is just out of reach, but we can see it. And I think also sometimes in our culture, it feels like that even when we have crossed the finish line, because we're always told there's more. There's always a next thing. So sometimes it's not even that something fell apart. It's just that we like crossed the finish line and then we're not as satisfied as we thought we'd be. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well now the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so I think just understanding that feeling is so critical, because we can all identify experiences in our life where it seemed like I crossed the finish line, but then it felt like it moved, or I saw the finish line in clear view and I face planted, or got thrown off course, or had to stop when I thought that I could just keep going.
Well, like you talked about, as sucky as the 400-meter dash is, then it almost becomes like you're running a perpetual 400-meter dash. Yeah. Which is exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unsustainable.
Yeah, you kind of get on this hamster wheel. And I think, a big point that I try to make in the book too is, as much as those experiences are hard, and they honestly really suck, and they hurt a lot of the time, whether it's like a painful, sometimes those almost are like painful experiences, like a loss in your life, or someone hurting you or whatever. And sometimes it's maybe not super painful, it's just really discouraging or disappointing, like didn't get the promotion you thought you would. But what's interesting is, as much as those things feel like huge obstacles, I also think that they present a unique opportunity. And that opportunity is to really step back and pause and reevaluate, because when we're just going and we're just moving and we're chasing the next dream, we're doing all the things, we're living our life, we're just crossing off milestones, we just kind of do. And we kind of just get on this cycle without ever really pausing to think, is what I'm pursuing right for me? Yeah. And is this, maybe this one is the right thing, but I'm starting to realize like I need to put more energy there because all these things over here are distractions. And so, it gives you an opportunity to really reevaluate, where am I going?
Yeah.
What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And you might find when you do that you actually don't care to be the best on the track team. Maybe that's not really a value of yours. Maybe you really got into it just to spend some time with your friends and something to enjoy. Maybe you don't care about breaking glass ceilings or being number one in your industry. Or maybe you do, but I think it's really important to dig into, well, then why do you care about that? Is it because your friend did it? Is it because it sounds good? Because I think we get so caught up in setting arbitrary goals or chasing arbitrary dreams because they sound neat that we've never really identified why we care about those things. And until we do, we're not going to be able to sustain them very well, even if we do achieve them. So I think sometimes those setbacks are actually surprising setups to really get clear on, is this even the right thing for me? And if so, how can I adjust my plan of action or my approach the next time around? And if not, what do I need to change?
Yeah. Well, I wish, looking at my life, I wish I would have learned all the best things in life from all my victories. Mm-hmm. Right? Like,
same.
but it's like, I tend to learn things the hard way. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that there's any teacher in life like failure. Mm-hmm. I think you look from a biblical perspective, like when God's saying, I give grace to the humble, and I think every failure, every almost, every death of a dream, it's a moment to choose humility. Yeah. And when we do, like, he extends more grace, and all of a sudden, like you're saying, now we're having all these epiphanies, we're having all this instruction, we're having all these things that set us up for what's next. And so, Jordan, you're very open in your book. You're very open in social media. By the way, Embrace Your Almost. You can get it anywhere that books are sold.
Yeah,
so
crazy.
Go get it today. I love the video you shared going to Target when you were seeing, and you see all this.
Yeah.
That was super cool. So you share pretty openly, on social and stuff, of just your journey. You've had some pretty big almost that have been heartbreaking for you to walk through, and so you're not just an author that wants to write about a topic. You're an authority on this. Mm-hmm. So would you mind walking us through a little bit of that journey for yourself so we can kind of understand your story a little bit and maybe glean more from it and with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the book, I cover all sorts of different almost. And I almost say, like, some are lighter. Some are like, dang, that career dream didn't work out, and some are really heavy. And I think we all have those in different seasons of our life. And so in my experience, my life, honestly, when I talked with you the last time, I was kind of on top of the world in the sense that everything was going according to plan in my life. And I had just written my first book, which was a bestseller, national sold out book tour, hit Success 30 Under 30 list, had bought our house with my husband. My husband left his job, came and worked with me, like had all the things that I thought I wanted at the age of like 25. And all that was great. It was a huge gift. And then toward the end of that year, I found out we were expecting. And I remember thinking, this has been the perfect year. Like, everything is going according to plan. Like, it was just like, I was just like checking off all the boxes of life. Like, no disruptions, things were working out.
Hey guys, quick commercial break here. Breaking news, exclusive breaking, first time ever heard in the world news, just for you podcast listeners. You guys know, we've been talking about it for a couple months now, The Death of a Dream, Resurrecting Purpose When Life Doesn't Go As Planned, my first book coming out October 18th. Well, listen, I talked to the publisher and I said, I got to take care of the podcast listeners. Can I have 100 free codes for free ebooks for the podcast listeners? They said yes. I said yes. Now I need you to say yes. All you got to do is email me, Daron at blackbirdmission.com. Let me know you want the book. I'm going to send you a free download copy, a free download code, so you can download the book and start reading it literally months before anybody else in the world does. Why? Because you're a podcast listener. So email me, Daron at blackbirdmission.com. Let me know you want the book. I'm going to send you a download code, and I want you to read it. I want to hear some reviews. I want to know how God's impacting your life through it. And I'm so excited to get the first 100 copies to you guys because you're podcast faithful. Appreciate you guys listening. Email me. I'll send you the book. Let's get back to the interview.
And was starting a family part of the plan?
Kind of. It was more like we were just like, we're open to it now. We got married pretty young, so we're like, we'll give it a couple years, and then we were like, let's just see what happens. And so then it happened pretty quickly, and we were like, okay, great. Like, so it was part of the plan, but we weren't super tied to a timeline at that point. Yeah. So then it happened, and then I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening. So I scheduled the maternity leave, like did all the things, and planned out the whole next year. And then that was right around Christmas time, by the way. That was in December. First week of January, went through an unexpected loss, which was jarring in every way. And I write about that a lot in the book. Or not a lot, but there's a chapter on it in the book. And that really threw me for a loop because I was like, this happens to other people. Like, you know what I mean? Because we always think like the hard thing's going to happen to other people. And so that was pretty shocking for us. And it definitely made me pause and kind of step back and be like, wait a sec. And it just made me, I don't know, it almost gave me some perspective on what's actually important in life, because I think I had gotten caught up in the reason I started doing what I do, to work online and to creatively, you know, kind of do the entrepreneurial thing, was so that when I eventually had a family one day, I would have flexibility. And it dawned on me in that moment that I kind of had lost sight of that, just achieving the next thing and kind of getting caught up in the hamster wheel of like next dream, next milestone, next thing, next step, whatever. And anyway, so it kind of brought me back to like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this. So then maybe I'm like, you know, it just gave me a lot of perspective on a lot of things. But again, at that point, I'm like, this is a fluke. I'm young, I'm healthy. This is gonna be fine. And so anyway, then 2 months later, 2 months later, COVID hit. So we planned the year thinking I was gonna have maternity leave in August. That didn't happen. So then we replanned the year in February. Then COVID hit. So we had to replan everything. And that like messed up all sorts of stuff we were doing with my work and stuff. So then it was like personal crisis, global crisis, therefore professional crisis. And then like 2 to 3 weeks after all that happened, maybe 4 weeks after, I found out I was expecting again. I was like, oh, great, back on track. Everything's going back to, you know, how we need to be. And, you know, I kind of just jumped right back in because I was like, that was a fluke. It's not going to happen ever again. And then 3 months into that pregnancy, we were like tracking it, watching growth every 2 weeks. Everything was going great. Like took our announcement photos, was about to post on Instagram, like, we're pregnant. And the next, I just was like, but let me wait. I have one more ultrasound tomorrow. Like, we'll just, you know, make sure. So at 13 and a half, almost 14 weeks, like end of the first trimester, think you're in safe zone, lost another baby. And it rocked my whole world. I mean, it totally like laid us flat in our back. We were so shocked. It was so strange because we were like, what is going on? You know, we just felt so attacked in so many ways. But it was like for the third time in 6 months, there was like, just basically, I thought I was on top of the world and everything got flipped upside down in a 6 month period. And I guess I share that because it goes to show just like how quick life can change. And those were the deaths of like more than a dream, but a big dream, you know, and to be like, I almost had a baby and then I didn't. Like what? Like multiple times. And we almost did this thing in my work and then we didn't. And that led to a lot of change in our life. I mean, it altered the way we live, the way we work, we moved. Like there were so many big decisions that even kind of felt like their own almost that followed those experiences, because those just gave us so much perspective. It made us ask really hard questions of like, what are we prioritizing and what really matters in this season? And how can I be, you know, supporting my health and doing things that I need to be doing, and just things I had lost sight of in some ways. So I don't want to say they were gifts by any means. They were awful and they're not good. Yeah. But a lot of good and like clarity has come out of adversity. But yeah, that was kind of like I would say that's kind of the cornerstone of my story. There's all sorts of other little almost that kind of surrounded that. But that was kind of really the turning point for me in shifting my perspective, shifting how I view what matters, shifting how I view which dreams are actually right for me, which am I maybe pursuing arbitrarily. And I don't know that I would have slowed down to really consider those things. And had I not walked through something so jarring that it forced me to stop. Yeah. It forced me to say, hold on, what are we doing here? Like, you know, and to kind of get off the hustle train of just one thing after another just to do it, and to start doing things with a lot more clarity and intention. But yeah.
I love that, Jordan. That's what I want to do if we could. We're going to do a second part of this interview where I really want you to kind of build us out of those moments of, okay, we're going to embrace our almost.
Yeah.
So once we embrace, what's that process? But what I'd love to end this episode with and talk about is, for a lot of people, there's this in-between space where they've experienced the almost. And like you said, like, we're not glossing over. I mean, there's pain, there's disappointment. There's like, we can fill in the blank of all the negative emotions and struggles. And then you pile on top of that, like, you know, where's God in this? You know, if I'm a good Christian person, God's supposed to make everything work out. So now I'm disillusioned at God. I'm disillusioned in myself if I had something to do with this almost, right? Or I'm disillusioned with family members or a friend that there may have been an element of betrayal or letdown. So kind of take us back, if you will, like right before the embrace, when it's just like, no, I just have the almost.
Yeah.
What were some of like maybe hurdles, I guess, or things that you kind of had to grapple with in that almost moment before you're able to embrace. Because I think
agreed.
What I know is there are people listening right now, and they're in that. They've just experienced the almost.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, a delicate and kind of critical reality, is that you don't have to embrace it, and you can get stuck there, and that's not the life you were created for, and that's not a life that's going to produce joy or peace or passion. But you have to make a decision for the embrace. So take us through some of the wrestling, if you will, when you're just at the almost, you're not at the embrace.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you brought that up, because for context, it's been over 2 years now.
Right.
So I'm saying this kind of from a hindsight's 2020 perspective. Truly, I carried a lot of anger.
Yeah.
Especially because it just felt like unfair.
Yeah.
I think there's a sense of unfairness. And I think also when something falls apart or something goes sideways, there's this uncertainty that comes up of like, well, is this going to keep happening? How long is it going to take for this to ever work out? Will it ever work out? All of a sudden, these like fears and anxieties and like lies of like even just your own identity being tied up in it. Like I believed there for a while, like, well, I'm the miscarriage girl. That's just like who I am. Like, and I didn't say that out loud, but it's like it started to just kind of become a reality in my life because it just felt like a repeated experience.
And that would be something like, I mean, we interviewed Molly Huffman on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and I mean, she lost her mom, then she had a miscarriage, then she birthed a son and lost him, then she got divorced. Like it was like
loss. It
was unreal, and she was like talking about like getting into those moments and being like, this is not my story. This is not the story that I'm supposed to be living, right? And like I hear what you're saying, that identity piece too. It's like, I'm sure for you and your husband, it wasn't like, oh yeah, we're going to be the miscarriage we've talked about. That's our thing.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not. We didn't sign up to be in this plot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. And I really struggled with even, do I hear the voice of God?
Yeah.
Does God hear my voice when I pray? There was a lot. I mean, one thing that I shared with my husband, it was a couple days or maybe a couple weeks after everything, and I was just really wrestling with a lot. And I remember I shared with him, I said, I feel like faith and logic are at war within me. And he was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, it feels like faith is saying like, keep trusting, keep believing. And logic is saying like, don't be such an idiot. Like, did you not just see what just happened multiple times? And I think, it's a normal, healthy thing to wrestle. And to, there's a C.S. Lewis quote that says, God is not, this is not like word for word, but the concept of it is, God is not testing my faith to find out its quality. He knew it already. It's I who didn't know that, I think the reality is like, you come to this point, like, how did he say that with the rest of the quote? It was something like, it's I who didn't know that it was really a house of cards. Like, I think going into that year, I was like, my faith is so strong because everything in my life was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, of course, God's good when circumstances are good.
I did these things. I pulled the lever. I got gold from it. It's wonderful. This is how it works.
And I think it disillusioned me a lot because I had achieved a lot early in my life. By the time I was 25, I had built a 7-figure company, multiple, I had the best-selling book. Like, there were so many like things on paper that were like, oh my gosh, super successful. And it totally disrupted my whole view of what success is. And it also kind of made me rethink, because I think there was a part of me that had gotten used to, if I just set the goal, do all the right things will go how I want. Like, I'll achieve that. I'll cross the finish line. And I think what I started to learn that year, between COVID and multiple losses and all of that happening all in one concentrated period, was I can do all the right things and things can still go horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And that was really hard for me. Like, I was like, but I was so angry because I was like, I did all the right things. I'm young. I'm healthy. I meet the qualifications. What's going on? So there was this whole like bitterness, I think, toward just the situation as a whole. I think the identifying, just because naturally then I felt like everyone viewed me like with pity and were like, oh, like something's wrong with you,
What's your Enneagram type, by the way? Do you know?
I don't know. I think a 3. So that's also like the achiever side where, and that was another thing. Like, I was struggling with, oh my gosh, I think I've turned motherhood into something to achieve, because I've gotten so used to like, you set this goal, you do this thing, you plan it, it happens, And so it was really disrupting to me all of my expectations of how life works and how you get to the next milestone in life or the next level in work or whatever it may be. I just kind of started to treat it as all one and the same. So when that all happened, it was like it felt like my world imploded. Yeah. And I carried I wrestled. I started to believe the lies of like, this is never going to happen for me. I'm defective. Like I failed, like all this stuff that it's like, if anyone else said that, I'd be like, I rebuke that lie in the name of Jesus. Like, absolutely not.
Right.
But when it's your life, you're like, but it feels like that, you know? So that was really, I think for a few months there, I was just angry. And I was wrestling a lot with, if God's good, then is he not powerful enough? And if he's powerful enough, is he not good? And I think a lot of times when circumstances implode in our face, we immediately begin to question everything we ever believed. And that's 100% what happened for me.
Well, one thing I want to encourage, someone listening or watching, Jordan, is to not miss, what you said just prior to this explanation when you said that this was 2 years ago, right? And if someone's in that place,
when you're in it.
What I want somebody to hear is to offer yourself a lot of compassion for the process.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because you can see where you're at now. You can buy Jordan's book, you can read it and be like, okay, well, here we go. Just need to embrace it and move on. Yeah. It's like, no, sometimes, and I love that term you used, wrestle. Right? I was talking to a guy the other day about, because he had a lot of questions for and about God. And I said, hey, do you know what, when God, when Jacob wrestled the angel in that Old Testament story. I said, do you know that story? He's like, yeah, I know that story. I said, well, after that, I was like, God changed Jacob's name. I said, he changed it to Israel. And then that became the name of God's people, right? I said, you know what Israel actually means? He was like, no, I don't. It's like, it literally means wrestles with God. And I was like, isn't this interesting that like when God's choosing a name for his people, like they are the people that wrestle with God. And I think when we have those almost moments when we're wrestling with anger, self-pity, condemnation, identity issues, is God good? Is like those are all a wrestle. And I think when we're there, we feel maybe often guilty or we're having it like you talk about, I have a lack of faith. It's like, no, this is actually in those moments where it's strengthened and you realize what it means to have faith.
Absolutely. And I would also say, I actually think a lot of times we think embrace means like, it's great, like make them, no, like actually embracing those feelings. Like embrace your almost doesn't simply mean like, love it. It actually means like, feel it. It means be where you are. And so there is a spot, there is a phase, there is a moment, there is a reality of like, okay, it's not that I'm embracing it where I'm going to like sit here forever, but I have to own that this is real, that I'm feeling this, and I need to deal with that. So you're not going to deal with that by saying like, I'm just going to put on a happy face and think everything's going to be great and keep the positive like thinking going. Right. No, it's actually being honest with yourself. It's being honest with people around you. It's saying, I need help. I had to go to therapy. I had to like seek like spiritual help because I was like, I think I'm done with God. Like I was at that point. Yeah. And I think until you are honest with yourself and with those that are there to support you, you're not gonna be able to embrace anything in the way that we think about it from a positive sense. You have to embrace the reality and the rawness and the brokenness that it is in the disruption, in the 5 seconds after, in the heat of the refining fire. Like you have to allow yourself to I would say acknowledge, but also embrace the reality of like, no, this is painful. Yeah. This is not fair. Like, do I suggest sitting there? No, but until you start there, you're never going to be able to move forward. So embracing your almost isn't like move forward and have a happy perspective. It's actually like you've got to wrestle through the crap.
Good.
Yeah.
So good. Jordan, we're going to end with that. Would you do us a huge honor and would you pray for somebody right now that they're there?
Yeah.
Like they're looking at the almost and they're scared to embrace it.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
And let's just end this episode. We're going to come back with episode 2 with Jordan. Once again, we get done here. Please go get her book, Embrace Your Almost, wherever books are sold online and in person. Support what she's doing and go through this journey with her. But I'd love us to close out this first episode with Jordan by just having you pray for folks in that space.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome.
God, thank you for who you are. And I just cover everyone who, if anyone is in a place of just anguish, Lord, or feeling disillusioned or discontent, or even like maybe questioning if you are sovereign, questioning your character, questioning everything they've ever believed because of a circumstance, of a broken dream, of a huge unmet expectation in their life, Lord, or something that's really, really hurt. I just pray for supernatural peace. I pray for peace that transcends all understanding. And I also pray that they have the courage to speak up, to voice, hey, I'm doubting my faith, and to not feel shame about that, but to seek help. Hey, I'm struggling. I need to find the support system that I need. Lord, I pray that they have the courage not to hide in shame or guilt for the feelings that may be coming up, or the pain that may be really affecting the way that they view you, the way that they view life, the way that they view those around them, Lord. But I pray that they have the courage to tackle that, to seek help in that, to talk about it. And I pray that you give them the strength to do so that they can eventually move through it, Lord. But we don't move through anything without dealing with it first. And so I pray that you give them the courage, the strength, and the peace that transcends all understanding, so that they can start working through the feelings that come up. They allow themselves to be a human, and they lean into you even when it feels like you're a million miles away, Lord. It's in your name.
Thanks so much, Jordan. I appreciate it. Hey, we're going to be back with another episode with Jordan, talking about the other half of this. Once we embrace this moment, where do we go from there? So until we talk to you guys again, remember these 3 things. God's for you. He's not against you. He's near you. He is not far away. And he's created you on purpose and for purpose. We'll catch you guys next time here on the Daron Earlewine Podcast.